what I think about all the time is like, I think about when I got started, and I'm sure, Kathe, when you got started, like thinking back on how much we have available in terms of
For
resources,
sure.
technology, it's insane. I remember when I started, there was no Medicare Advantage e-applications. It was
I
like
know. It
it
was all paper.
all paper. And
And then what about the Humana ones that had a barcode on them?
yes,
So you couldn't even make a photocopy. You
no,
couldn't photocopy them.
you needed to order new apps from Humana,
Oh my
and
gosh.
you needed to order new scopes from Humana because the scopes had had the codes on them as well that had to go on the apps and everything. So yes, I mean, and back then there was very few even Medigap e-apps. There was some. Mutual of Omaha had one. There was like a few like phone ones where you could call in and an underwriter would do an e-application, but they were few and far between. It was a lot of paper. And
Oh, we were spending thousands of dollars a year because I stopped doing face to face a long time ago. And even when I lived in San Diego, I would give the people the opportunity to meet with me. I'd say, well, oh no, we can do it over the phone. I next day aired applications to people and then had them next day air them back to me. You know how much money I was spending on those next day aired to and from?
a
It was
fortune, I'm
insane.
sure.
COVID was like the best thing to happen to the Medicare industry to make all of the insurance companies come up to our century.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yep.
I was celebrating when they all came out with these e-apps, and I'm like, this is great. Now I don't
Yeah.
have to FedEx or next day air.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yep. But so I definitely think about that. Like agents today are, I mean, I don't know if it's too far for me to go to say they're spoiled, compared to the way it was, and that's
I
it.
used to have to walk uphill in the snow both ways with
Yeah,
no shoes.
right. But yeah, I mean, I think there's so much ability now, and the business it's a great time to grow in this business. It's a very good time to grow in the business. Despite all the regulations, rules, everything like that, it's a great time, even still.
It really is. Whether you want to grow an empire or whether you're like me, trying to decide if you just want an annuity, because I look at my business as an annuity. It's a great business to be in. And if you're watching this, hopefully you know that already. And it's just a fantastic business. And there's enough business in it for all of us.
Yep, I agree. Let's try to, I know I believe there's two more stages, but I don't think we're going to talk about the last one, right? I think we're going to go in, maybe we touch on it briefly, but there's one more, I think, before it, if I'm counting right.
Preparing for the transition. And you've done that, right? Preparing
Yes.
for the transition or the sale. So transition can either be retirement or sale or death, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But somehow, how are you going to transition your business? And I've done it before with my financial planning practice, which I would say the numbers are probably very similar on what you can sell a financial planning practice for as versus what you can sell a Medicare practice for. So you've done it, right? You've sold a Medicare practice, right? Or transitioned somehow. Tell
Yeah,
us about that.
I would call it a transition. It's complicated, but it's in the same family. So really there's two different types of, if someone wanted to sell their business, let's say that that's their aspiration. In my opinion, in the Medicare space, there's two different ways to do it. There's two different categories. There's one where you sell the business, and selling, and I'll get into what that means, selling the business, because it's not just selling the clients or the policies of the book. There's a lot more that goes into it. That's number one. Two is selling the clients and the policies and the book, right? So one it pays significantly more than two, right? And so Kathe,
When you have your systems set
right?
up, right? You're selling your systems.
I was just about to go into that. Like what you were talking about earlier is essentially this right here, right? It's plug and play. So the first one is what you see a lot of these very large companies doing these days with the Integrity Marketings of the world, which I am a proud partner with, and the AmeriLifes of the world. And there's some others, Senior Market Sales and some of these other organizations. And they have come in and they've bought call centers, FMOs, technology companies like that. And what most people notice is like, when people think about selling their business, they think they sell and then they go off into the sunset. That's not the case in this first thing here. And because that's not the case, it's far more lucrative. But your business has to be a right amount of size in order to be considered for this. So typically what they're buying is, when they buy the business, they buy not only the clients, the revenue, everything like that, but they're also buying the systems, like Kathe said, and they're also buying the leadership. They're buying a business that can be ran without them having to run it. They don't want to run the business. They want you to do it. You got it to where it is. So they're buying you as much as they're buying anything else. And so usually in those types of situations, every deal is a little different. Not to say that, there's an exact blueprint all around, but a lot of times what you find is there's a contract that you sign that states you'll stay on and run the company and you'll hit certain metrics and things like that for a certain period of time. I almost think about it like an athlete. Like a professional athlete signs a contract with a team, and and then they're a free agent after that. They can re-sign or they can not re-sign. It's kind of similar to that. And sometimes it's 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And so people always ask me, what does your business have to look like? Well, companies that do acquisitions like that are not looking at your gross revenue. They're not looking necessarily even at your net revenue. They're not looking at how many clients you have. They're not looking at those kind of things. They are, but the biggest thing they're looking at above all those things is your EBITDA. And if someone's listening is not familiar with your EBITDA, it is essentially a metric and a calculation to determine the full-on profitability of your business, right? So basically EBITDA, there's a lot of things that go into EBITDA, but in layman's terms, it's your profit minus your expenses, and like basically what's your profitability of your business. And there's certain things you can subtract from your EBITDA that aren't recurring expenses, things like that. We can go really into the weeds on this, but usually people that do acquisition number one, because that's the structure, and because it's really acquiring the entire business, they get multiples of that EBITDA, and it varies. It varies pretty significantly. It depends on how much they really want your business. Like there's been talks as high as 10 to 12x somebody's EBITDA. So like, let's say your EBITDA is $500,000 or $1 million. If you get a 10x multiple, $500,000 EBITDA for a 10x multiple is a $5 million earnout, right? $1 million would be $10 million earnout, that kind of thing. So that's what the Integrity AmeriLife kind of deals. It's kind of more or less kind of what they look like. It's not an exact, because every deal is different. Every deal is unique.
And explain to the viewer what an earnout is, because that's not here's your money, see you, bye.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Great point. And very true. So usually deals are, and of course, as I mentioned, every deal is unique, but usually when somebody gets a deal, it's paid out over a course of time, right? So you get some of it up front, and then the person would get some of it. Let's say it's a year by year thing. Let's say they said, okay, we want to see you grow by this much a year. You get a percentage of it every year for the course of your contract. Some of it might be in cash. Some of it might be in stock options of the company. So it comes in, and it's all unique. It's all custom for the person doing the deal, the negotiation, all that stuff. But their earnout is basically they earn it over time. So let's say you have a 4-year deal and you get 25% of it every year when you hit the certain goals that they place for you. That's an example of what a deal could look like potentially. But again, all deals are custom, and they're different, and it's really custom for the business and the person, and how much the person buying it really wants that business and what they're willing to pay. Like sometimes they would overpay for a business that they want more than another business. Maybe they like the structure, they like how it runs, they like, they like everything about the business. Maybe the person running the business is a jerk and they're a pain in the butt and they're like, we're going to have to work with this guy. They might not want that business as much as somebody who's good, easy to get along with, right? It could be as simple as that. That could play a factor in an offer. And so that's number one. Number two is selling your book alone. Usually you see people that have smaller books, smaller businesses, because a lot of times they're not going to be able to sell for number one. Number one is designed for businesses of a certain stature. Number two, and it's going to vary, but usually industry standard with what I've seen has been 2, 3, maybe 4 years of commissions, maybe paid out over time. Maybe it's a percentage of commissions. Maybe it's a percentage of commissions for 5 years. Maybe it's a percentage of commissions for 10 years. These deals can get structured in any which way, but a lot of times it's not a percentage of EBITDA, it's a percentage of commissions and policies and that kind of thing.
So like gross, sort of like gross.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's significantly less than number one would be. Like if you compare what someone would get for number one versus number two, it's significantly different. And the reason for that is because if someone buys your book and you sail off into the sunset, they have to manage it, they have to maintain it, they have to retain it.
And
so it's less valuable. Some
people are going to die. Some people are going to, there's a percentage of people that don't come back.
Yep. And you're not there to grow the business, right? And number one, you're there for a little while. You're there for a while to grow, to help them grow. And so number one is so much more valuable to the person acquiring you. So they'll pay more, they'll pay a premium.
But you also have to continue to work.
Yes.
With number one. So you've sold your business, but you're continuing to work. I don't want to say it like you're an employee, but kind of you're like an employee then.
You kind of are. Yeah. You're very, very powerful, well-paid employee, but you're an employee.
But you're still an employee. That's right. You're still an employee. And, so it just depends on, do you want the annuity? Do you want the walk away? Or do you want the empire? Do you want the empire money? That's what I call it, the empire money. But you're still involved and you're still doing things and you still have to hit your goals and yada, 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 right?
Yep. I mean, and I think the best way somebody can prepare for that is know your numbers. Like figure out every metric you can think of for your business, right? Like how much are you making from each carrier? How much are you making per month on average? Like a lot of people probably don't know that off the top of their head. Like what's their average per month, right? Like what is your EBITDA? What is your EBITDA? And, sometimes it's, I've heard of organizations, that have brought in professional valuations of their business to really determine these things instead of just trying to do it themselves. It can get rather complicated, but if someone is kind of preparing for that type of, thing, the best thing you can do is to know your numbers because they're going to want to know that before they tell you anything.
I think every insurance agent should read the book Profit First. You've read it, right?
I haven't read it, but I've
haven't read it? I would assume that you would have.
Wow. I've listened to the ebook. I haven't read it.
Oh, so it's the same thing.
Yeah. Right.
Listening to the ebook is reading. Okay.
Yeah.
Great I consider book. That great reading book. It.
I love that book.
Yeah. Before I read that book, I was just kind of floating along because, my business is very profitable now that I read that book because I do my numbers twice a month. And I do the thing that the book says. I send part of it I have a fund for charity and taxes. So, and I have different bank accounts for the different things, just like the book says. And I spend a lot less money now. Before, if I needed something, if I just, I'll buy that. I'll get this. I'll do that. Now I look and I see how much, I have a profit account and I send money to the profit account and that's on top of what I pay myself. So yeah, definitely
Yep.
would recommend that book. Every insurance agent. You have your
I
agents
second
read
that.
it?
I haven't, but I should. I do
Yeah.
have them. I do send books to our agents though. I love books. I love reading, as maybe people might be able to tell. I love books. That's definitely one I'd recommend everybody read. It's really, really a good book.
But Christian doesn't count. Listening to a book is reading, even though I do.
Tomato, tomato, I suppose, right?
Exactly. The information is still getting into your brain.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah. So I think that, there's not probably too much that needs to be said, I think, on that stage. And then the talk about the last stage and what it is. I don't think we're going to spend too much time talking about it, but maybe we can just briefly touch on it. What is that last stage?
well, neither one of us have done it. So
Right.
we would really need to bring somebody else in that. Well, I mean, I guess I've done it with the sale, but not really because I'm still working. And that is transitioning or retiring. So basically, retiring, or the other alternative, dying, right?
Yeah.
Not working anymore, basically. And there's a transition to that. And I've been podcasting about that for a long time with the Rock Your Retirement Show. Back in 2016, I started thinking about retiring. And I thought, well, what would I do if I retired? And so I started a podcast before anybody knew what a podcast was. And I went to the senior center. I had a party where I invited all my friends, and I said, do you have an iPhone or do you have an Android? Yes. Hand me your phone. That's the admission to the party. And I showed them how to subscribe to the to the podcast. And I said, here's the podcast. Listen to it. And it's changed a lot over the years, but basically learning all this stuff about retirement, it's just really hard for me to walk away. And I live in a 55 and older community, and all my friends are like, Kathe, when are you going to retire? Why are you working? Come play with us. And so far, I mean, I'm 58. I think I'm too young. And I'm looking at the inflation that's out of control right now. My husband and I have assets. Technically, I could retire right now and I would be just fine. But my mind always goes to the future. Like, what happens if we have 18% inflation like we did in the 70s? Or what happens if we do this? Or what happens? And so this business is so easy and fun. I'm like, well, why should I retire if I can work 2-3 days a week? And this is one of the reasons why I'm hesitant to hire somebody, because then I'm not working 2 or 3 days a week anymore. Then I'm working 7. And you know that, Kristen. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. I
But
think
yes,
one thing that's important to talk about, probably not as much for selling, but maybe like for the other thing, right? Like if, let's say, someone passed away, is succession planning. It
right.
doesn't get talked about enough, I think, in our industry. If you're not set up right and you died, and anybody listening, right? If, let's just say hypothetically you're listening to this and you're not set up right and you pass away, let's say like you don't have a corporation, all your commissions are being paid to you, you don't have like a will in place, like that kind of stuff. Your policies a lot of times will become, with most carriers, house accounts,
House accounts.
and they're
Yeah.
lost. My wife originally got licensed in 2016 so she could take over the company if
If
something happened to me. And so usually, like, you, to pass on the business and the commission, you need somebody else that's going to be licensed, for one. And it can get rather complicated. Every carrier is a little bit different. Some are easier than others, but it definitely helps when a entity owns the policies instead of a person, because anybody can be swapped in and out as a principal of an entity, right? And so, I think that's really important. I think having a will is very important. And like, if you have a significant other and they're not licensed, and like whoever you'd want to take over the business, it's probably a good idea for them to go through the process of getting licensed for that reason. And yeah, I mean, I think I think succession planning is very important because I've seen situations where agents unexpectedly pass away and they didn't have anything set up. They didn't have any structure like this built out, and their whole business just got lost. And it's tragic. I mean, of course, you can have life insurance and things like that. But I mean, imagine you have a business, maybe you have 1,000 clients, maybe you have 1,500 clients. That's a tremendous asset just to be lost.
I know, it's a legacy.
Yeah.
And boom, it goes up in smoke, not because the clients didn't want to remain, but because you didn't set up your business properly. And will an LLC help with that, or does it have to be a C Corp, or how does that work?
I think any of the above would suffice. So my company is set up as an S Corp. A lot of people think, oh, it's probably an LLC and taxed as S Corp. No, it's a real S Corp. It's an actual S Corp. Not saying that LLCs aren't good. LLCs, are good as well. We own several other LLCs, like, the 7 Figure Medicare Agent Summit LLC is an LLC. And, we have several subsidiaries of Christian Brindle Insurance now that are LLCs. But yeah, I think any corporation would suffice because the main thing is an entity is not a person. So
Right.
Another person can come in and kind of take over the entity, and they can maintain and retain those policies.
That is great advice, Christian. I mean, I was in a Facebook group earlier this year where somebody had a heart attack and they were in the hospital for 3 days or something. And it just makes you realize none of us are permanent on this earth. We are here until we're not. And why not pass your legacy on to somebody else? I mean, we're talking about, for a lot of us, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. We're not talking about $3,000 a year. We're talking about a nice annuity that you'd be passing on to somebody. Yeah, they'd have to work a little bit for it, but I'd hate to see that just poof, it's gone.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's tragic, and it happens a lot more than people realize. And so, that's definitely something that I think is very good to do. But yeah, I think, it'd probably be a great thing, if you had somebody come on your show that has retired really fully.
I know, that's what I want. Yeah,
I think they could probably share a lot more insight than I could. But yeah, I think that would be very interesting to listen to. I would listen to it for sure.
I would too. So we have to start scouring through the groups to see if there's anybody in there who's just lurking, who's actually retired.
Yeah.
And see if they would come on. I think that would be a great thing to hear from them, and what happened, within 6 months, and then what happened a year, and kind of see are they upset that they retired? Do they wish they wouldn't have? That kind of thing. I think that would be great.
I've tried to get my dad to do a video with me, an interview with me, but he doesn't want to do it.
Do you think he'd do it with me?
Maybe. I don't know.
For my podcast, maybe it's too close to home doing it with you.
It could be. My dad is how do I explain my father? My father, he's an interesting personality. He's a beautiful soul. He's a little difficult, little rough around the edges, He's a senior, he's 70, so, my dad is a wealth of information. He's, very experienced. He was around for a long time. He's got great war stories of like Medicare supplements in the 90s and stuff like that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he would or not.
Well, let him know that, I don't know if I can say the name of my show on yours, but let him
Absolutely.
know that the Insurance Business Babes would love to have him come on our show and talk about, how long has it been since he's retired?
About a year.
Oh, this is perfect timing.
Mm-hmm.
We would love to hear about his experience of retiring over the last year. And, we edit the show. So if he says something he doesn't want you to know, we could bleep that right out.
Kathe, I appreciate all your time. This was a great series. I hope everybody gets some great value out of it. Please share with everybody, I know you mentioned the Insurance Babes podcast, which is a great show, by the way. Kathe, and Joanna Wyckoff co-host together. Very good show. They do a great job. Where else can people find you? Talk about your website. How can agents learn more about the website? Where can people get connected with you if they just found this series incredibly transformative?
Well, I run the certified MedicareAgents.com website. And this is a website where insurance agents can get listed and can get found online by consumers who are looking for agents. And you can reach out to me through that site. I'm also on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn name is Kathe, Kathe. And thanks a lot. I love to connect. So yes.
I love it. Guys, we'll link certifiedmedicareagents.com in the description of this video, as well as all the videos of the series. There'll be multiple. If you haven't caught the first ones, recommend going back and rewatching those as well. And I'm sure we'll be doing more things with Kathe as time goes on. So thank you again for your time and all your insight and knowledge. And this was great content. So I appreciate you. And guys, like, comment, subscribe, you know the drill. And we'll be back next time with more content. Thanks, guys.
Sounds good. Bye.